Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever looked at a data set, maybe customer info or product details, and you needed to know how things looked, say, last month or even last year?
Not just the current snapshot, right,
Yeah.
but the actual history.
Exactly. These dimensions, the who, what, where, describing your main transactions, they change over time.
But slowly.
Mm.
It's not like those constant transaction updates.
Right. And if you just, well, update the record when something changes, you lose the history.
And losing that history, well, it means you can't really understand trends properly, can you? Or analyze past performance accurately.
Yeah, it really muddies the waters. So today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that challenge, slowly changing dimensions, or SCDs.
Ah.
We'll get into what they are, why tracking this history is so crucial for, real insights, and how some modern tools are making it surprisingly doable now.
What's really fascinating, I think, is realizing this dimension data is the context for your facts.
Yeah, context is key.
Customer's address changes, maybe an employee gets a new title, or a product gets recategorized.
Hmm.
These aren't big transactional events, but they definitely impact how you look back at historical transactions. Like,
Hmm.
without tracking these shifts, you might analyze sales in a region where a customer used to live.
Oh, right, and attribute that revenue to their current place by mistake.
Exactly. Big problem for accurate analysis.
So the core issue is really how do you capture that change over time without just overwriting the old valuable context?
Which brings us to the different types of SCDs, different ways to handle it.
Yeah, let's start with the simplest one. Type 1, you just update the record
Okay.
directly. Find and replace, basically.
It's easy, sure, like fixing a typo. But the old value, gone, forever.
Useful only if you genuinely only care about the absolute latest value, but that's often not enough, is it?
Right, type 1 is simple, but you sacrifice that look-back ability, which makes you ask, how much history do you really need? Because for a lot of detailed historical analysis, you need the full story. And that leads us straight to type 2.
Ah, type 2. This is usually the big one for data warehouses, precisely because it keeps the complete history.
So how does that work mechanically?
Well, when an attribute changes, you don't touch the original record. Instead, you mark the old one as inactive somehow.
Like setting an end date or some kind of validity timestamp.
Exactly. And then you insert a totally new record with the updated information. This new one gets marked as current, usually with the start date, maybe an current flag, too.
Okay, got it. So you end up with multiple rows for the same logical entity, but each represents a different time period. And that allows for really powerful point-in-time analysis.
How so?
Well, you query the table, but you filter based on those validity dates. So you can effectively see what the dimension data looked like on any specific date in the past.
Ah, okay. Like analyzing a marketing campaign based on the customer segment they were in when the campaign actually ran?
Precisely.
Mm.
Even if their segment changed later. Or seeing how sales reacted to price changes during the exact time those prices were active.
That granular view,
Yeah.
only possible with type 2.
Yeah, that's the power.
But let's be honest, implementing type 2 manually, managing all those dates, the flags, writing that complex SQL for every single dimension, it's historically been a massive headache.
Oh, absolutely. A huge barrier.
And yet, there are other types, like type 3 adds a bit of history, just the previous value in another column.
Or type 4 with separate history tables, even hybrids. Type 6 combines things.
But for that deep point-in-time analysis, type 2 is kind of the gold standard. And it's the complexity of doing it that's held people back.
Which is exactly where the modern tools are changing the game. They abstract away all that painful manual coding.
Like dbt, the data build tool.
Exactly. dbt has a feature specifically for this. dbt snapshots. Think of it like automated version control, but for your dimension tables.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. How does that work in practice?
It's surprisingly straightforward. You basically define a simple select query pointing to your source dimension data.
Your raw customer table, say.
Right. Then you configure the snapshot. You tell dbt, okay, this column is the unique key, like custom-aired. And then you choose a strategy for how dbt should spot changes.
What are the common strategies?
The main ones are timestamp, where it looks at an updated column in your source.
To see if the row's been touched recently.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Or you use check, where you list out the specific columns you care about, like address or status.
Whoa.
dbt then compares the current values in those columns to the last snapshot.
Okay, so you set that up. Then what happens when you run dbt snapshot?
dbt compares your source data against the existing snapshot table using the strategy you defined, if it sees a change for a record.
Like a customer moved address and you're using the check strategy on the address column.
Perfect example. dbt automatically handles the type 2 logic. It finds the old record in the snapshot, sets its dbt valido timestamp to now, effectively expiring it.
Okay, so it closes out the old time period.
Yep. And then it inserts a new record with the updated data, setting its dbt valid from timestamp to now and leaving dbt valid as null, meaning this is the current one.
dbt adds those special columns itself, the dbt valid from dbt valido dbt succeeded.
Automatically. It manages the whole history tracking structure for you.
Wow, so what used to be hours, maybe days of writing tricky SQL turns into just a few lines of configuration.
Pretty much. It dramatically lowers the barrier. And StreamSets Transformer has a similar approach too, right? More visual.
Yeah, StreamSets offers a visual processor for SCDs. It's especially neat for platforms like Snowflake because it can generate the NoSQL needed automatically from your visual setup. Really streamlines building the pipeline.
And beyond specific tools like dbt or StreamSets, we're also seeing people leverage native cloud platform features more.
Like Snowflake streams and tasks, maybe, for building custom automation.
Sure. Or things like Databricks Delta Lake, which has time travel and versioning built in that can really simplify implementing SCD logic.
So the overall trend is definitely towards making Type 2 much more accessible. The tooling is catching up to the need.
Absolutely. The infrastructure is making it easier.
And if we zoom out a bit, once you have these well-managed Type 2 SCD tables, maybe built with dbt snapshots, tools like the dbt semantic layer can then query them really intelligently, can't they?
Yeah, that's a huge benefit. It allows analysts to ask questions and slice metrics by dimensions as they actually were at the time of the event.
Giving that deeper, more accurate understanding of historical trends, cause and effect.
Exactly. It unlocks much richer historical insight.
So ultimately, choosing the right SCD type, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or something else, it still comes down to your specific business needs, doesn't it?
Always. You have to weigh the value of that full history against, say, the storage cost or complexity. But leveraging tools like dbt snapshots or StreamSets massively lowers the effort needed for Type 2. It makes getting those rich historical insights much more achievable for more teams.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway here? Mastering slowly changing dimensions, especially understanding Type 2 and how tools like dbt snapshots make it practical, it seems fundamental. It unlocks the full story your data tells over time.
It really is about moving beyond just knowing what is to understanding what was and how things changed.
Which transforms your ability to ask much smarter questions, get deeper insights.
Definitely.
So maybe something for you listening to think about. What attributes in your data sets are changing over time, things you might just be overwriting now?
Good question.
And what historical questions could you finally answer if you started tracking that history properly? Okay, that wraps up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.